Jose, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been such a joy to watch you teaching with Trebor, the Platform Co-ops Now course. I wondered, for those that might be watching this, if you could give a brief introduction to Mondragon, to the MTA, and to yourself.
Hello everyone, for me it's a real pleasure to be here today with you. And I think it has been great working with Incuba Co-op as the local partner in Australia in this Platform Co-ops Now program, as you mentioned, with Trevor and the new school. So I'm very happy today to be discussing with you with this special methodology that you have on the three horizons. Brief introduction to what is Mondragon, what is MTA, and what about myself. Firstly, about Mondragon, for those of you who do not know it, so Mondragon was a cooperative movement that started more than 70 years ago in a very small region in the north part of Spain after a local crisis. That now that we are living in the midst of another crisis, we might connect a lot with those moments. Although the reality at that time of this vast region was more closed economy, more basic, was not access to education. So there were some other struggles that they are not the ones that we are having today. But for sure was a result of a crisis in the society where a new alternative was created. The original dream of Mondragon was actually to create a human-centered movement, first in the community and then through creating of real companies, the possibility of really addressing a human-centered companies, and led by a local priest, Arismendi Arrieta, and a small team of 5 people who were the pioneers who created the first Ulgor, the first cooperative of Mondragon. Started a movement of cooperative movement because they end up discovering that the best legal form in order to feed the creating human-centered companies was the worker cooperatives. So this that started more than 70 years ago end up in what is today Mondragon. Mondragon today is the workers cooperative largest in the world. We have activity, very diverse type of activities, mainly in 4 different areas, meaning industry, coming from sectors like the auto, like the car industry, or the construction industry, or the home appliances industry, or the machine tool industry. So we have very big companies in that field, and around 30,000 members or workforce is working in the industrial industry, in that industry. We also have retail, having the 5th largest retail player in Spain, Eroski, with also around another 40,000 members spread all over Spain with more than 1,500 supermarkets. We also have our own bank, cooperative bank, that is Laboral Kutxa, that although is might be the scale of a big banks, might not be a very big bank, but in terms of efficiency and results is one of the most outstanding performance in Spain and Europe. And then we also have the education part and the research center. So we have 15 research centers all around Spain, the Basque region and Spain, and then we have our own university, that is Mondragon University, that was the first project that was started in Mondragon, and then eventually today we are a university with having 4 different faculties. So today with a group that is around 80,000 employees worldwide, with more than 200 factories operating abroad, what we can see is that Mondragon is being one of those examples of a human-centered companies, of a cooperative companies. To prove that it's possible to have an alternative, it is possible through the cooperative form become at scale and in your sector to be having like as good performance as any conventional company and with a more human-driven impact. That is actually what the very beginning of the Mondragon project is, a social imperative. Talking about MTA is a project that we started 12 years ago from within Mondragon University. The inspiration was how do we, after in a movement of more than 70 years, how do we actually reconnect with youth? We have the university that has been developing broadly, but we say we really need a new generation of young team entrepreneurs that actually they are able to connect with the original values of Mondragon, but updated for today, and not only at the local level, but at the global level. We have the dream to enable youth build on the passions and dreams to build their lives, and that education and youth should be the light of the society. So that was a little bit our first intention. We started also a group of 4 of us to try to nurture this revolution in education. And the reality is that 12 years later, we have 13 MTA labs, or social innovation labs, or cooperative, team cooperatives labs all around the world. We are present in 4 continents at the moment. We are not yet in Australia. And what we have learned is that actually the value proposition of actually enabling youth to become change makers for the good of society, and to do it becoming team entrepreneurs or cooperative entrepreneurs, because for us, the essence of cooperatives is cooperation. It is possible and is suitable for them. You know, we live in a moment in the world that youth is really addressing the need of authenticity, the need of purpose and participation. And what we have seen is that the engagement is massively, not only in a local culture as the one we can have in Mondragon area, but we have been able to see this transformation also in closer regions, as could be the case of Madrid and Barcelona or Valencia, but also in farther regions, you know, as could be our labs that we have in Mexico, or the case of China, or the case of Seoul in Korea. So in that sense, I think give us a lot of hope. Give us a lot of hope to universalize or making universal the original purpose of Mondragon, but in this case, connected with youth. As the founder of Mondragon, he used to say, first people, then companies or cooperatives. So even in this case, after 12 years, with more than 2,000 young team entrepreneurs all around the world, we see that youth is ready, is transformed, and they become like a change maker in teams. Now, I think what we have to see in the following years is which is the scale of the companies that they create. Our programs and specifically our bachelor degree, the Lane degree, in the case of Spain, became an alternative to the educational system, because it became the degree, not only that people is connected with the passions and dreams, but also that has the highest rate of employment, with 97% of the graduates from Lane degree that they are working, and they're working in something they love. And then 57% they remain as entrepreneurs, because actually while they are studying for 4 years, they create a real team company or cooperative in some cases to actually develop over the 4 years. And then about myself, I'm a social entrepreneur, and a social entrepreneur. I have been very lucky to be part of this, or I'm part of Mondragon, and I'm a COP member of Mondragon University. And I was very lucky to be part of these 4 fellows that we came together to start at MTA. So far, I think we have seen a fascinating journey of the last 12 years. And I think maybe one of the aspects that we feel very connected and very happy is recently we fully believe that cooperatives can be an optimal model for as an alternative, or sometimes complementing, sometimes an alternative to the existing movement. And in that sense, recently also seeing the platform co-ops movement, we fully believe that it's something that connects with youth today, connects with the agenda of the world today, but at the same time can bring the original values of the cooperative worker cooperative movement and to put that at service. So we are very excited. We are very excited. We see how young people is connecting with these principles and all around the world. And I'm very lucky to be, in this case now with the platform co-ops, also with Trevor and New School, to actually be partnering together to try to put a seed. Our contribution, as Mother Teresa used to say, we don't have to get worried about doing big things, but the small things with all our heart, and that's what we try to do every day.
Jose, I've loved that the philosophy of Mondragon. One of those things that really stood out to me in one of your lectures was about the bank. When it started, it had this saying, and you'll know it better in Spanish, but you translated it as your wallet or your suitcase. And if you don't invest locally, you have to go for work in another region because the jobs aren't there. if we don't, as locals, look after what's close to us. I wanted to, I wanted to bring that up because some of the people that will watch this will be in cooperatives that are local at the moment, and they might have heard the term platform cooperatives, but for them, they might not be clear on what a platform cooperative is and why that would be of use to the existing cooperatives that are in the sector. Could you give us your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that in that case, I think it's very right now what you say. So traditionally, cooperatives and worker cooperatives have been very attached to the local region, you know, and actually the beginning and the end in some way of those projects or those social ventures was actually in the local community. So that's the reason that when we look at the cooperative movement worldwide, what we see is multiple local initiatives happening in different regions all around the world. There is a huge fragmentation in between what is happening between one locality and the other one. And actually, as you mentioned, in the case of Mondragon, I would say that we have two original movements that were strategic. One is the one that you mentioned. So we fully understood that in order to grow and to become an alternative, you really need to have, in this case, the access to development through finance and to invest in those cooperatives in order to be growing. In that case, we created the founder of Mondragon created the bank, and so clearly that was needed. But that was exactly what you were saying, no? If you want to remain able to be living in a healthy life in your local community, you do need to put your savings in the common bank, because the bank has a clear commitment to create cooperatives. So actually, the bank original purpose was not only to collect the savings and to operate as a bank, was actually with those savings, we are going to be creating companies for the local community. Okay, so I think in that sense, as far as I connect what Incuba Coop is doing, actually the bank, one of the keys aims of the bank was actually to nurture the creation of new cooperatives. Okay, second, I will share another story that is the case of Eroski. In the case of Eroski, when it started was a reality of 12 in the case of the Basque region, there were 12, 15 different small retail cooperatives that were really local to the village. And then some of the founders of Mondragon, they had the opportunity of visiting the big cooperatives, retail cooperatives that they are in Switzerland. They were in Switzerland. So these Migros and Co-op. And then they realized the scale. They say, okay, in Spain, it hasn't arrived yet, the dimension of a scale, but unless we come into a bigger project, otherwise, if we remain very local and very tiny locally, then we will become residual, and we will not be an alternative when these big shopping malls will be arriving into our local community. So actually, in this very origin project, there were a talk with all those local cooperatives, and from these 15 local cooperatives, 12 of them were the ones who actually started Eroski. The reality is that unless this process had happened, we could never have an alternative, as Eroski has been today the 5th largest retail player in Spain, with more than 1,500 and present all over Spain, not only in the Basque region, but all over Spain. So I think this second concept is very important. Traditionally, cooperatives have been local to the local community. This is our first aim. But the reality of the economy today it's global. So actually, if we want to remain competitive, if we want to remain non-residual value proposition, we do need to play together. And then this second value that we have in the cooperative movement, I do believe that is one of the key ingredients, that is intercooperation. It's about playing together, not inside a small cooperative and the workers coming together, but among different players, among different cooperatives, different initiatives to actually come together to do a value proposition. I do believe that this is a key need for the cooperative movement today. And then what we have is what is the alternative for the platform co-ops. The reality is at the same time in the world today, we do see that the value proposition behind a platform co-op, a digital platform co-op, became a key competitive advantage. You know, if we look even to the biggest players, if we look to the first 10 biggest companies in the world, 7 of them, they have a platform business. So actually, the key competitive advantage of platform businesses today in the economy today became a key source of competitiveness and success. So then we, as a cooperative movement, that we have clear that the origin is a social imperative. So our aim is not just to become rich and to grow, but actually our aim is to serve the local community. The way of actually playing together into a bigger projects and the fact of doing digitally. So having a platform business key competitive advantage became a combination that can actually make our movement more robust, make our social imperative bigger impact, and even in some cases the only alternative that we have, and then maybe making an alternative to the existing movement of what is called the share economy. Because I think this we have seen, the share economy has proven that is successful, but human-wise, it has proven also that might not be the best optimal solution. And I think that's where we are. So I would say to those local cooperative movement, yes, we do need to incorporate the dimension of intercooperation in order to become stronger. We don't need it locally to become much bigger, but we need to play together as a principle. In Mondragon and in MTA, we have one principle: we never do alone what we can create together. So we really need a very strong intercooperation strategy. And then we do need to incorporate the digital platform business to our businesses, to our existing solutions. Because without this, we might become not positioned or becoming residual in the impact that we can generate. And that's my viewpoint. I don't know if as you know me, I speak from my passions and dreams, but that's the way I might be thinking, and that's at least one of the angles that I would like to share with you.
Thank you. I actually concur with pretty much everything you've said. I want to talk about platforms for a second. So for some people, the likes of Uber or Airbnb or iStock Photo, they've been incredibly efficient. The sharing economy is seen as like a better way of getting the things that we used to get. So for those people who may not be aware of the same things that you're aware of, what do you see as the downside of the platform corporations that exist, and why do we need platform cooperatives?
So I think that you are totally right. So platform businesses, they have proven that their value proposition is very successful for the world of today. But when we look to the human impact that this movement is having, sad to say, for the only ones who this became a successful alternative are mainly for the owners of those platforms. Okay, and in some cases for the users or for the customers indirectly, because they have a much better value proposition in terms of the price, or in terms of accessibility, or in terms of the digital service that they are. Okay. So I think that do we need to really learn from the platform business? Yes. Do we need to accept that this is the only model in order to be playing? I think not. Otherwise, humanity will have a huge negative impact. Because what we learn from these platform businesses is that the impact they have on the people who work on those companies is not positive. In that sense, I usually don't want to say specific names of some of these platform businesses, but the reality of the conditions of the drivers of these solutions, of the conditions of the people who is delivering this last mile product in the logistic channel, or the solutions of the people who are taking care of some services, of taking care of specific profiles or elderly people, or some needs, or washing houses or cleaning services. Usually the conditions when you are having a platform business is not anymore that you have your own full employees, it's people that is somehow interacting with the platform. So actually there's a huge gap in between what traditionally you were doing with my employees from my company to the people who is working in my platform. So then there is where we have a huge gap in between the human conditions and the human value proposition of these platform businesses for the people who is working in the platform business. And as it is a digital business, as it is a platform that people voluntarily take part in that solution, it became less control or less clear or less transparent, which is actually the conditions of those people. And they between, I don't know, in the case of Spain, we usually say, okay, yes, they are not employees, they are people who is working more by themselves, and which are the conditions they are having. Oh, it became like a gray area. But then when you look at not the specific cases one by one, when you look at the scale, what you see is that in Spain, what we say is you have these fake self-employed people. Okay. This, if we connect with the cooperative movement, might be something similar to what happened, what we call the cooperative, in the case of Brazil, cooperativas de falencia. That means, okay, yes, we create an alternative, but in this case is to externalize a work that inside the company we cannot actually have it in those conditions. So actually, if those platform business, they will need to incorporate in their business all these employees who are working somehow externalized. They will not be able to do what they are doing. Okay, this is one angle that is very important that we have clear, that this is a clear side of the platform business today, that is not addressing the needs of humanity and is using some rules or some practices that in normal conditions in conventional companies will be unacceptable. Second, I think is as platform business today, they have their main KPI is to maximize profits. Then we see which are the conditions for those people who join in order to offer their products and services in those platforms. Okay. In this case, the average commission is around 30%. What makes that, for example, now in the midst of the COVID crisis that we are living, what we see is that for example, I will put the example of the restaurants. For restaurants to have the need of being in a platform business might be something they need to do. Otherwise, they cannot have these delivery services. If they don't have delivery services, they become very weak, especially in these moments of COVID. But then for them, accepting that just for delivering the food very near the place is a 30% commission is something that also damages the business model. And this will naturally, eventually meaning that in this crisis, we are going to see how this crisis wipe out a lot of small businesses. The platform business, what does is actually creating this delivery service at a cost that they cannot afford in order to remain competitive. So I think these will be two of the angles that is very important that we look at existing platform business solutions, because we do need, this is a social need that we need to address. And our value proposition is not as a competition. I don't like the way to usually put like, okay, you have the conventional model and then the cooperatives is the competition one to each other. But yes, I do believe that platform cooperatives needs to address that is possible, a different way is possible, to prove that is an alternative, that another way of doing that is possible. That is possible to run a successful platform business where the commissions of running the common platform might be a 10%, from a 7 to a 10%. It does not need to be a 30%. Where the conditions of the people who is working in the platform, we do respect the conditions that there is there. This may be to talk to specific activities. For sure, platform businesses are everywhere. So we could be talking also about, for example, the impact of the tourism in terms of, okay, when we have solutions of this, we see in that how in the last 5 to 10 years, in the driving services of cars, a lot of local communities and regions are trying to defend the local employment to this movement of the platforms like Uber or Lyft and similar. We do see that in the case of the tourists and these more models like Airbnb, we do see how local communities are trying to create new laws in order to defend the local economy. That is there. I do believe that platform cooperatives might be an alternative. So when we have solutions at IBACO, or we have solutions that proving that it's possible to organize with the same efficiency, same value proposition that we can see in sharing economy solutions, that is the case of Uber or similars, but to do it in a way that is good for the local community, it's good for the employees, and is accessing as good service as the conventional platform businesses. It's possible. Similarly, when we see models like Airbnb, although still a small new initiative, but it's possible to develop this interesting value proposition of an alternative of having hosting at different houses, but being something positive for the local community, because we do believe that tourism can be positive for the local community, but you have to put some limits of the way you are developing as within the platform business. So I do see that there is the challenge. And then the last one, what I would say, is the scale. You know, the problem of these big platform business solutions is that they are more like empires. You know, they are aiming to conquer the world. The value proposition is we do need to become in this economy of attention. We do need to be the only alternative. You know, we see how big they are growing. And they become massive. They become, in that sense, present everywhere. They are conquering different markets or different realities in order to be the only alternative. And then once they become the only alternative, then how do you counterbalance this? All of them, they have this dynamics in. So once you are the only alternative, then you can play with this dynamic pricing, and then there might not be an alternative because you already wipe out all the other players in that sense. No? So I think that the third negative impact that we can see in the movement of the platform businesses and the share economies, we have learned that it's important to have not only very few big players, that they have more like a monopoly of this alternative, but it's important to have a more balanced reality of different players. And the reality is that all these businesses, the other day, one of the participants in the program was sharing, how is it possible that they are becoming everywhere so successful, making huge return on or like the business model is very solid to make money in every action they are doing, but they still losing money. They still losing money because they are conquering the world. Because what is behind is big funds. What they are aiming is like, come on, you need to be the solo player. You need to be conquering the world. If we see, for example, the cloud services today in the world, in between Amazon and Alibaba, I think they have probably 100% of the cloud services in the world. So they become the only two players. If we look at the solutions of these riding services, applications, we see the weight that alternative as Uber is having. If we look at the alternatives of the marketplaces worldwide, we see the weight that Amazon is having. If we look at the solutions of the tourism and these local served rents, apartments, sort of tourist apartments worldwide, the weight of Airbnb is huge. So the third dimension of this humanity challenge is we are still on time to actually counterbalance that we have many players in the field and not only one alternative. I would say that these three are for me the most important aspects of the existing sharing economy and platform businesses that we do need to present an alternative. On the conditions of how the people is working those platform business, on the commissions that these platforms are having, and on the fact that do not allow to be just solo players in terms that they have like a monopoly of those services worldwide.
Jose, thank you. That's so eloquent. I'm going to hopefully lift the mood, ask you to lift the mood a little bit and pretend for a moment you've got a magic wand. And instead of having platforms that are, eroding worker dignity, overpricing on commissions, yet still not profitable, and are seeking to operate unprofitably in markets, forcing out small businesses that still have to be profitable and pay their management and pay their bills. These things are really dangerous in an economy. But if you had a magic wand and you could create an alternative, robust economy that, address those three ills, what would that look like? Can you show me in your mind's eye a mature vision of the future?
So I think in that aspect, something that is very important is why these three problems that we have seen are there is because we are having only those organizations, they are having mainly, or in some cases only, one bottom line, that is maximizing profits. Okay, so we do need, as an alternative, that we have, at least from our opinion, we say quadruple bottom line. We do need companies that actually, in their KPIs, in their bottom line, that is maximizing the economical impact, maximizing the social impact, maximizing the environmental impact, and maximizing the happiness of the people which work in there, or the spiritual impact. I do believe that this should be part of the new reality. Okay, when we look at the crisis of the COVID today, we have been seeing the negative impact of really fragmented sort of solutions. So it's not anymore that, okay, I do only need to look for the economical impact, and then somewhere there will be a solution that is coming. I think we are not in that area. In the current area and the post-COVID era, we do need that all the initiatives and all the projects do need to assure a quadruple bottom line. And it's not to maximize one variable and to have restrictions, but actually it's to maximize 4 variables as part of the aim. As long as I would love to see that this is part of the new reality. I would love to see that this will be a way that every conventional company in the world, we do have, like, yes, in order to remain competitive economically, we do need to actually maximizing our social impact, our environmental impact, and our happiness of the people who works in our companies. In order to do that, what do we need? What we need is leading players that show us, as maybe Gandhi used to say, we do need to see leading players what makes what we are doing now become clear and transparent. So we do need to see that it is possible to create new alternatives that became as good as the one we are seeing today, but also they have some other assets that actually create a much better value proposition. Because within this crisis, I think we have seen that all of us, we are quite surprised, or we are sensitive of the human dimension where we live in and how we live in that sense. So I think that, yes, we do need to have a new reality of companies that will be proving that it's possible to embrace all the positive aspects of this sharing economy, of this platform business, and go one step beyond in order to incorporate those variables and to become participation of people as users, as customers, as the players in the platform, as the workers in the company, that become really full participation as a local community. And I do believe that how this will be possible is we do need to have successful alternatives who become a reality. We do need to have, in order to learn that this is possible, we do need to have in the different sectors at least 1 or 2 new platform business. In this case, our model that we believe is the platform cooperatives, platform co-ops, but I think this might be one of the quick wins in order to make that happen. But what we need is actually that this became an alternative and a reality. So when we look at the reality today, we say, okay, yes, this is a way, we have learned a lot from this, but this is a way that is even better. Maybe the example that we are talking with Airbnb, okay, yes, we do love the way of development through the apartments, but we need to counterbalance before it's too late and they have really damaged the local tourism strategy in the local community. So we do need to have an alternative that become as good as the existing one, but with a different value proposition, optimal one. Once we have this, I think we'll have a double effect. That is, the existing platform businesses we do need naturally to incorporate some of these practices. So actually, the alternative is not to create a platform cooperative movement that became fighting against the existing model, and then there's a fight in between more this capitalist sort of way of thinking that this cooperative is. Personally, I do not believe in this. What I think is what we need to do is we need to prove that an optimal model is possible, that there is possible to create those solutions in multiple sectors, and our understanding of sharing economy is great, but it's not the optimal model. We need to go to a much more participatory model with this quadruple bottom line. Once we have these examples happening, then the existing platform business will transform. The existing platform business will say, well, they would say, we need to incorporate those practices. So actually, in the emerging future, there will be platform cooperatives that will become successful solutions that is coming out there, and there will be existing business models that they will learn unless they incorporate new angles or new bottom lines in their KPIs, they will not become successful. So they will need to change. I think this is part of the emerging future that we can see. That's the reason that is very important today that we actually address and we multiply the effect of having the solutions. Which are the differences between what we have today and what we would love to see? First is the imperative. It has to remain social in terms of, for example, now what we are seeing, which will be the activities that we can start doing things. Are those activities that we say that the humanity challenge is bigger? Now we are moving totally all around the world, sadly, into a Great Depression economically, and it's going to be an employment crisis worldwide. Then, although it's a great social drama, I think that is a good opportunity to prove that an alternative model is possible. And we are going to be, similarly that we have seen in the health crisis so far, we are going to be seeing that sadly in the months to come, by the end of this quarter and the next year, we are going to see the economical damage of social life that we are having. Then if we do see that there is an alternative that is generating employment and is generating employment with different principles, I believe that this will be like an emerging new reality of what we do. Different angle is how do we count youth? Okay, in this ambition of the future, youth needs to be an active player in this movement. You know, I think the great opportunity behind this is that traditionally cooperatives have been more connected with people that become older. I think the reality of the youth today is they really are hungry for getting engaged in projects where they can become change makers, they can be part of the solution, and we do need to enable them to do it in a positive way. So I think when we are seeing in the climate crisis, it's important to have voices like Greta Thunberg, but it's also very important that those movements of youth, this Greta generation, is connected to be part of the solution. You know? And I do believe that this new reality of business will be a way of engaging youth to become team entrepreneurs, to creating together a world that we want to create. You know, it's not just to say, okay, this world that we are seeing is not the one we want, but actually we became active members in building this new world. And I do believe that them becoming a cooperative or team entrepreneurs and then doing it through platform cooperative business models will be like a huge force to actually make this transformation much faster. Thirdly, I would say that is not going to be, so our model is not to create another very big player, you know. It's not that, okay, we have a very big player in the conventional platform solutions and we need to create another big player using the same rules. In our case, there are two big differences. One is, yes, we need to maximize the economical impact, but at the same time, it needs to be in harmony with the social impact, the environmental impact, and the spiritual impact. So for us, it's not just a way of, we have a much more broader perspective of the impact we want to generate. And in that growth, we will be incorporating practices and incorporating realities that they are not similar to what is done. For example, now, I think the priority of the businesses has to be to create jobs instead of just maximizing profits and reducing as many jobs as possible. This week I was seeing that we have already the first Didi and Uber self-drive cars in Shanghai, in China. Okay, that is great as in terms of the technology, what are the possibilities? But then is this the moment now when we are having an employment crisis to actually reduce as many as possible as jobs in the trade? I do believe not. You know, I do believe that is not the moment. It's great to test the technology, but we need to generate activity and economy in that sense. So this will be part of I believe that the platform businesses will be moving or platform co-ops into this generating of employment as a key value proposition for the years to come. And with this, I think that what is important is as a humanity that we see much more colorful possibilities. You know, I think what is important in this is, this is the only way. I think we cannot only see that there is only one way of doing things. And I think on that we have an urgency to really prove that there are multiple different ways. And this will eventually make that the new ventures that will be created, both in the cooperative movement as well as in these new conventional sort of startups, will understood that it's important to incorporate many more ingredients and not just the one of maximizing immediately only the KPIs of economic performance. So when you ask me, how do you envision the future? I think that led by youth, and what we say in Spanish, ganas and canas, what means youth but not alone. So I mean like young cooperative movement but not alone. Ganas means will. Young people have a very strong will and energy. And canas means gray hair, what means together with people who has experience, together they will be creating a new sort of companies that will prove that yes, is it possible not to blame the way we are doing, but actually to prove that it's possible an alternative way. Will be important the scale, as I mentioned before, of these initiatives. It's important to really prove that this model can be an alternative, but at the same time, we should not be so worried in the short term to actually how big we are. You know, I think that is very important that we prove that it's a better model, that is an alternative, and it's happening everywhere. So then once this is in place, then eventually we'll be changing. When we look to the social innovation change, something very important in this diffusion of innovation, we do need to have at least 16%. So once you achieve that 16% of the society is incorporating those practices, then eventually the whole industry will change. So I do believe that what we need in the following years is to prove that projects with these ingredients into account, they reach a certain type of presence that will prove that this is the only way to go. If we look at the social entrepreneurs movement worldwide, I think that is a huge movement. In the program that we are having great social entrepreneurs who have made already a radical change worldwide, as is the case of Jack Sin from Singapore with the World Toilet Organization, has proven a huge transformation of the sanitary services worldwide, and it's just one institution. We do have other great alternatives, as could be the generation of energy in the case of Germany, really becoming the cooperative social energy movement in Germany become strong and was originally led also by a social entrepreneur. So I do believe that this movement of young people connecting is also connecting with a huge movement that is, we do have worldwide now an alternative to conventional way of looking to create business, but these social entrepreneurs, I think this is an emerging trend where hopefully when we look 20 years from now, there will not be such a big difference in what today we have a conventional business and social entrepreneurs, but there will be more what Bill Drayton from Ashoka, he usually say, no, this hybrid chain. So in the sense that they become playing together. So even the conventional businesses, they start to play together with social entrepreneurs, they start to actually playing together in order to create a better solution. You know? I hope that the COVID, in that sense, has got very negative impact so far, but also will be a wake-up call about where we're going. And then to eventually look at this future and having much more clarity what to do and what not to do.
Jose, brilliant. Can I just say, can I live in the world where we have 4 metrics of our bottom line and the youth and the older people can lead forward a revolution that measures those 4? It sounds similar to my ideal. We're now going to get...
I will add just one last thing, because the other day I was with a community of innovators from China, and one of the questions they were addressing is, what is the reality of living today in a world, in the community as Mondragon, where you can be living into a cooperative reality everywhere. So similarly, when we go to Silicon Valley and we say there what is normal, it's actually to be an entrepreneur, to be creating startups, so actually prove as a society that it's possible that I do not need to be employed by someone, but actually I could be the creator. They were asking me, what is the sense of living this in Mondragon? In Mondragon today, you can be living everything surrounded by human-centered companies. So actually you can send your kids to a school, to a cooperative, that you know that is clearly addressing something that is very important for you, that is education, but with the right understanding and aim. At the same time, you could be doing your shops, daily shops in a retail business that is a cooperative. You could be going to the bank that is a cooperative. You could be bringing your elderly relatives, if they need to be in a residency, they can be in an elder residency that is a cooperative. Then eventually, while you grow, you could be going to university in a cooperative solution. Then you could be even finding your first job in a cooperative, shifting your job from one industry to another, remaining in a cooperative. So what I was trying to say is, it is possible to imagine a society. What would be normal is that you have a human-centered alternative for what you do. You know, I think today when we look to living in other places of the world, we are always, how do as human deal with all these big monsters or big corporations that they are looking at me just as a consumer, or they are looking at me just as a more cheap labor sort of activity. So you are, as human, you are under big threat on your development in that sense. I think that in this emerging future, we need to believe that it's possible to be surrounded by companies that they are human-centered companies, you know, and that they have this aim of actually enabling a human to flourish, as a community also to flourish, and remaining at the same economically as successful as it is. The case of Mondragon today became one of the incomes of the community is one of the highest in Europe, will be at the levels of some Nordic countries or some regions in Germany, but then the distribution is one of the flattest that we have in the region. And I think this is thanks to the cooperative movement. I do believe that this future is possible. So I think that when we have more than 5,000 people who come to visit us every year to Mondragon, is because they want to believe that living in this sort of community is possible. You know? And I think this will be, in this coming future, will be something that I would love to see, that there are not just few examples in the world, but that we have, this will be the new normal. You know?
I love that. Thank you so much for making that real and bringing it back to home. Rowan, I'm going to ask you to join Jose and myself in the conversation and share the Miro board, if that's all right. Jose, at this point, we just want some clarity around what we've heard and checking whether the horizons that you've described are accurately captured here. So, Rowan, would you mind talking to what you've written here, please?
That was awesome, Jose Mari. I was enjoying the journey and trying my best to keep up and capture it as best I could. From what I understand, where we started from, we started with the history of Mondragon, and Mondragon started 70 years ago in response to a crisis, very much similar to what we have now, which potentially is an opportunity in itself. And so Mondragon was founded on education being key, and that and out of that was able to grow to be today the largest worker co-op in the world, where it has an industrial division covering auto, machinery parts, what have you, with 30,000 workers, retail with 30 to 40,000 workers, its own bank, and a very strong education focus. So it's a university, and so it's got 80,000 employees and 800, I think it was 800 companies worldwide. I might have got that number wrong.
250 companies.
Thank you.
250 cooperatives, yeah, companies. And then talking about factories abroad, not in Spain, also to this global scale, we have 150.
And 150 factories.
Yeah, worldwide. Abroad, sorry.
And so the model itself has proven incredibly successful over that 7-year period. More recently, MTA was started, the Mondragon Team Academy. It was 7 years ago, I think you said. And the objective there was how to connect with youth. And so the key there that was education and youth could be, to use your words, I think, the light of society. And so the idea behind that was that there was an opportunity for youth to challenge the existing status quo, and to challenge the emerging problems with respect to bringing a level of authenticity and universal. You said it better than me. Creating a universal. I've missed something there. Universalizing some thinking, a cultural position. There's now 30 MTA labs around the world, and what this proves is that the co-ops can be created and updated for today's society, given the ability of the proven history of Mondragon to create this world leading cooperative movement over a 7-year period, and more recently with respect to MTA.
Yeah. Maybe here as so today we have 13 MTA labs, so 13.
Okay, sorry, pardon me.
And then we started 12 years ago. So maybe this is just for, as my English maybe sometimes is not so good, for you to, yeah. That's my 30 or 13. Sorry for that.
I rounded up from 13 to 30. There you go. So it's clearly been a proven to be a successful model. And then we'll come back to the banking. One other point was traditionally worker co-op's been localized. So this is when we move to, well, what is the state of the world today, and why is it that there's a need for platform co-ops? And we started off by talking about that the main KPI in the kind of global economy at the moment is around about maximizing profits, delivering profits to shareholders. And the sharing economy hasn't proven to be human centered. And so while it's been very successful in deriving profits for a few, it hasn't delivered to society as a whole. There's also a huge fragmentation of movements and people kind of globally. And in order to, and so one of the reasons why platform co-ops have emerged as a potential solution is that in order for co-ops to compete, they now need to scale. They need to scale to compete in the global economy, and that was your experience with the case study you spoke about with respect to Switzerland. And sorry, I can't spell the 5th largest retailer in Spain. I'll do that later. But now Mondragon has the 5th largest retailer in Spain, retail network in Spain, due to an understanding that it needs to scale in order to compete. And part of that scaling challenge was the need to from very early on, it was recognised the need to be able to access finance and to create its, the cooperative movement would need its own kind of financing mechanisms. And so the key aim of that banking capability of communities reinvesting in themselves was to enable that bank to nurture new co-ops. And I believe that's kind of built into the structures currently. So then we kind of moved to kind of exploring, well, okay, what are some of the problems that are facing the world as a result of our poor sharing economy structure? And it was that going back to that scale argument again, that in order for a business to be successful in today's economy, it's driven by scale. And so a platform business needs to be scale driven, but not a human scale. And so this leads to workers being exploited, that the benefits are accruing from scale, accruing to a few equity owners and not to the other participants in society. So it's a very small number of people who are benefiting from the value created, and it's creating huge wealth inequality, which leads to other problems in society. There's also local communities being hollowed out by these platforms not really being focused on human-centered development. It leads to, there's the examples of that fake self-employed. So that's, platforms arbitraging kind of labour laws in order to take advantage of situations in order to maximise their profits at the expense of their workers and those people that use the platform. So that leads to workers being under stress and having no say in their working environments, and which so it's a very inequitable kind of working and poor working environment that workers are being placed in. So we spoke about some of the drivers or the piecemeal work that has kind of arisen. So control of these platforms resides with a few. So another problems that are kind of emerging is that, like, as these platforms grow, they become less transparent. So there's even less accountability because we can't keep track of the internal mechanisms by which they're operating. It's leading to a wiping out of small businesses, although we still have time to address that. But so the recent COVID crisis has demonstrated that with restaurants being dependent upon delivery platforms. So the margins are extractive, and customers are captive. So this is all driven by the need ultimately that scale requires dominance, which leads to a monopoly rents. And you need to be, you made the point that you need to be a sole player in the industry in order to make money. There's so many of these platforms aren't actually profitable.
Rohan, I love it, the way you are doing it. So my deep congrats. And in this maybe dystopia understanding, I would maybe like to address maybe a few things that I haven't shared properly. One, I think, is the role of youth. So the reality of youth is that they are totally passive, you know. They are passive, disconnected with the capacity of creating, learning, and growing. And it doesn't matter if we are talking at the job place, but also at the education field. That should be the place where actually you are nurtured, you are fascinated. It has always been like this, but today the reality is that even in the school, at universities, youth is totally disconnected, you know, and we get them confused with other things, but they get totally, so what we say is their passions and their dreams and their capacity of engagement, it's totally out of the learning process. So actually, it's more like being in jail than more being a place that you flourish. And I think then what makes at the same time is that youth came more as a reactive or aggressive to challenge. And we see it from movements that I mentioned before, or we see in Korea, young people is shouting hell Korea. So this is hell living here, while this is one of the most developed countries in the world. So this is very important, the role of youth and the situation today. Second, I think, is the use of technology. So we are seeing emerging use of technology, robots, exponential technologies. And I think it's a great tool in order to make human flourish. But again, as we say today, depending on the use we do of this technology, can be very harming to humanity. So we do need to embrace technology, aiming for a positive impact for humanity, not just once again looking at the use of technology only with one angle of view that will be maximizing profits and success, and then we lose the match, and actually technology could be very harming to humanity. And third, I think, will be when we look at the development of entrepreneurship and we see the development of new projects, is very, maybe in some cases directly because of the funds behind, the investors behind, and in some other cases maybe because of the dream we have created. Is entrepreneurs, they are really looking for quick exit, quick benefit, and short term. You know, I think this is, in the long run, as a humanity, we have a lot of people just thinking in the short term, not really looking forward what is the long term impact, and then we degenerate. We saw it in the last crisis, the real estate, the subprime crisis we see in 2008. When you are only looking to the short term, you might be generating a huge toxic reality for, in this case, for the banks. In this case, when we look at a lot of people thinking on short-term projects, we might be generating a huge negative impact in the long term to the local communities. So I would like maybe to add these three angles to the analysis you do, that I love it the way you have done it.
Awesome. I think I've tried to sneak them in there. I haven't got my sizes right. So that was like the kind of the negative where the world's heading, and it's in some senses that's the dystopia that we need to kind of avoid. And so what we kind of then explored was how platform co-ops can act as the dynamic impact for change. They can be the catalyst for change. And so we started with some hope that we still have time, that we still live in a multi-dimensional economy. We haven't got just one player and dominant player in each sector, but without adapting our co-ops to the platform of co-ops. So without adapting our co-ops to become platform co-ops, they could become marginalised. So on the positive again, the value proposition behind platforms through a platform co-op can be socially driven. So what we're saying here is we need to move from the single profit motive. We need to encompass the social and environmental and cultural goals that go with our economic activities. And so platform co-ops show that this can be possible. And so it's the kind of theme that you kind of painted here was that platform co-ops can kind of be the pacemaker, the change maker agent. Platform co-ops offer a bigger impact and alternatives to the sharing economy. So like within the sharing economy, by having this different value proposition, this is the point here, you can have a different value proposition in terms of alignment with stakeholders in the economy, so that you deliver the same outcome from an economic standpoint, or a productive endpoint, but you can deliver social and cultural and environmental goals at the same time. So in effect, it can be, your sharing economy can still be good for the community. You made the point that we don't need to fight the existing models. We don't need to kind of take this on front on. It's about creating successful examples that then become the leaders that the rest of the economy will copy. So so we need successful alternatives in different sectors. So these alternatives need to can create a better employment on better terms. So in response to the current COVID crisis, there's the opportunity for platform co-ops to nurture and foster the creation of employment, but do so on better terms. And we need alternatives that are as good, but with a different kind of value alignment with your community. You made a couple of points here that so again, we need to maximise the economic impact, and also the social environmental impact. Right now it's about jobs, not profits. And then this is the point that you made, that the successful platform co-ops will lead to changing systemic change. So they catalyse systemic change. In the future, we will have, and I loved it, this is kind of, there was two bits you finished on. One was, in the future, we'll have a hybrid value chain. That I think I mightn't got that terminology right, but this idea that, the companies, you'll still have, privately owned companies, but they're playing together with platform co-ops. And because of platform co-ops leading the way in terms of how setting the standards with how society interacts, that those other companies become more human-centered. And then you spoke about the need for youth to be an active player, and that youth could be the change makers, and that teenpreneurs can be active members and accelerate transformation. And then you had that quote at the end that you finished on, that in Spanish. Again, my Spanish is appalling, so I got the English version: youth, but not alone. And that, I think, is an amazing story.
I love it. You are a master with this.
Jose, we've already done our time that we asked of you. Would you be prepared to continue this discussion for another 20 minutes?
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy for that. So count on me.
Excellent. Well, then the next phase of this process is to discuss, we've got a dystopian view where the one empire-ish corporate platform owns each space. It's very dystopian because they've done so at the expense of labour, small businesses, and possibly other externalities. And this utopian view, which is Mondragon worldwide, and we do our banking cooperatively, our schooling cooperatively, our shopping cooperatively, and we're happy little cooperatives wherever we may be. These two worldviews are possible, and nobody has a crystal ball or a franchise on the future. But typically what happens is there's a area called the messy middle where innovations come into play. And I'm going to talk with you about, say, 3 innovations and ask you how we might tip those innovations towards the outcome that's preferable compared to the outcome that's not preferable. So the first innovation I want to play with is policy settings. So we are seeing antitrust legislation in Europe. We're seeing calls for the breakups of the likes of Facebook. We're seeing policy levers at the local government area driving Uber and Lyft out of Austin so that the Austin Taxi Drivers Co-op can be there. What do you see as the key thing that the platform cooperatives movement and its supporters can do to move policy in the direction that achieves the sorts of outcomes that we want?
So actually, as far as I understood, but maybe I'm not right, I think the reality of the governments today, so actually local governments and policy, they are very sensitive to the negative impact to their local communities, and to the local economy and to the local reality. But today, what I will say that I'm seeing is actually they are resisting, or they are trying to control or to put boundaries of these big players. But they do not have like, okay, we do not still have, okay, which is the way to go. Okay, I think that this will be part of the what platform codes can lead. It's not just about putting boundaries in order to resist or to defend the local reality, but actually is, can we design policies that will be positive towards what you want to do, instead of being just trying to be negative to control those negative impact that you are seeing that can harm your economy or your reality or your community? What would be the positive ways that policy can accompany the development of new realities? I do believe that this is part of what platform co-ops should do. So it's not just about to say, okay, we are having, I don't know, all around the world, in all these cities, we are having, how do we counterbalance these tourist floods sort of a movement, because all the hotel industry is being damaged, and do we need to put control? Or in the case of, for example, in the Basque region, the government has been very actively, and in Bilbao has been very actively in order that these big driving services, they are not damaging to the local drivers, sort of local initiatives on how to control them. So they have put a specific regulation in order to control. So actually you are avoiding the negative impact. What I would love to see is that the platform co-ops will be, is not just avoiding, is which is the direction, which sort of policy do we need to take in order to move into the right direction. This is what I would love to do. So then say, okay, yes, we have a model that could be in the tourist industry or in the travel industry, or in this, that this is positive. It's a better model. It's not one or the other. It's a better one. There is where I would love to see that the platform co-ops will show. And I think that local governments all around the world, they are smart enough that when they realize that an existing new reality is also possible, they will. I would want to see more and more of this. Actually, yesterday we were having the meeting with the local partners from the program, and I think it was Neto from Argentina. He was addressing, oh yes, we do have for this COP cycle as the last mile, we do have a special support from the local government. They want to see this reality to happen more and more. So they are asking us, instead of just enabling an alternative way for this last mile sort of logistics services, we do want to accompany and make policy in order to nurture that the last mile is addressed into something that is possible for the local community. I do believe that this is part of the value proposition that platform co-ops should do, proving that these new models request some sort of policy that will accompany in order to make them strong and to create an alternative.
Thank you.
This in the case of Mondragon history has been very important. So when we analyze the history of Mondragon, we do see that has not been a movement linked to politics, but the local region and the local government has understood that this is something they need to really take care of. Usually when we talk about cooperatives, we talk about local place development, we talk about like companies enrooted in the local community. So we have seen that this is a huge asset for the development, and the local government has been making that this sort of model is something that the policy is accompanying its development, for many different ways. It can be in ways, for example, when you have can be in ways of a specific politics for this, or specific legislation for the cooperative registration, for the cooperative system, and to make that, or could be that when you are having the Mondragon movement was very rural. So actually you cannot remain having world leaders companies, industry companies in a very isolated rural region. So if you look at the distribution and the roads policy in the Basque region, or Mondragon and, for example, the headquarters of Eroski, Elorrio, the roads services they have, they are outstanding. They are the best you can see in wherever part of Germany. Why? Because you say, okay, we want to remain jobs locally and big industry activities locally. They do need to have a great logistics service. So I think that it's very important that the cooperative movement is not running to politics, but it's very important at the same time that the local government will see which is the policies that they need to put in action in order to do it. There's one sentence from Aracancelo, he used to be the president of Mondragon for 8 years, and he was one of the creators of Eroski, that he said, law has been created for the conditions of the past. So we need to respect law, but we need to propose new laws to be created for the world of today. Otherwise, we are building the future with laws that was created for the past. And maybe one example is in the case of the legislation and I think this is very important for the platform COPS development. The legislation for the cooperative movement in Spain at that time was, for example, when you are having retail services, you could have only consumer COPs. And there didn't exist cooperatives where you have two types of users, of members, consumer members and workers. So actually, in that case, Antonio was one of the ones, together with Ormachea, the one who was also founder of Mondragon, working very close with the government to make it possible that we have a legislation where you have a multi-type of members participation. I do believe, for example, this will be very important for the platform COPs, because platform COPs, by its nature, is connecting different type of members. So we will need to see not just running platform COPs with a worker cooperative sort of legislation, but no, they have workers who put in common the cooperation activity, but you also have members who are the users, they are putting their flats, or then you have members who are actually the ones who are using the services. So I think this multi-type of members sort of cooperatives will be definitely something we need to see in the following years, and will be great that the local legislation and the policy will eventually embrace it and develop and accompany it. In countries like, for example, what we learned about this policy from South Korea, the government had very clear that they need to counterbalance the role of these big chaebol, of these big conglomerates that have been very successful for the economy, but were somehow damaging the society in some way. So actually, since 2006, they created a special policy in order to nurture these social businesses and cooperatives. And I think you see today that Korea is becoming in the region a reference on social innovation and the cooperative movement. So I do believe that yes, we need platform COPs will be an alternative, and we need to play a role in the policy making activity, although not to be in politics. You know?
We've just had a decimation of traditional wealth and the way that we would view wealth with coronavirus. Unfortunately, I think we're yet to see the true economic impact. I think it will only be months, not years down the track, and we have to recalibrate the value of companies, the value of listed equities, particularly ones that rely on international trade and things. I can predict, or I'm going to put out there into the messy middle, that there will be a flight to security, to real returns instead of projected returns. And investments in the future are going to favor return over risk, because there will be plenty of risk to go around, but potentially not as much return as we've seen in the last 20 or 30 years. How do you think a changing risk return appetite might be beneficial or degrading to the platform cooperative movement, in your view?
As you share, I think what is coming next will be very challenging, you know. So I think that we might not be ready for what is coming. To be honest, in my case, the last 4 months probably has been the 4 months that I have worked the most in my life. And the reason is not only for what is the sanitary health issue that we have today that has been dramatic, but especially which will be the economical one that is coming afterwards, you know. So I think we need to try our best to be a small contribution to what is done. I do believe what you are saying in the terms of, okay, until now, and I think this, let's see how it's going to be playing in the platform COPs. Why? Because when we look where has been the investment put so far has been in this, as you mentioned, no? These risk promising results somewhere that will be coming. The reality now is that it's going to be, in one angle, is going to be very attached to the, okay, which is the value that you are creating today in your businesses, because we need to be attached there. Although also at the same time, not sadly, I don't know, what we learned over these last 4 months is that there are some new ventures, new companies who actually, as the one we are using for the call, that they become truly successful. And then this crisis was like the best process they needed in order to speed up, you know. So for sure, also in the crisis that is coming, we'll see that there will be emerging now. For example, we are seeing that all the investment is moving into this digital education sort of. There's a huge movement of money moving there. And in the platform corps, we need to be proving that it's possible to take the positive waves that is coming with a positive impact for the humanity and a positive business models. So then also the investors will love to be there. You know, this is so far, to be honest, in these last months, I have seen from this relationship that I might have with some investors interested in startups, I have seen those ones who are saying, okay, with this new wave, where is the money going to have a bigger success and return? And then I have seen also some investors more thinking on impact investment or some more concerns of humanities, or tell me the social projects where I can put this, where we can put or loan our money for this crisis, you know. I do believe that what I would love to see is that there's something more in between, okay? To say, okay, yes, now is the moment to put the money in projects that they become successful at the same time that they become positive, you know, because I think the level of awareness that we are going to have in terms of economic damage or economic and society damage, we might not have been seeing this for a while. So I think in that sense, we are going to become much more aware, and then everyone is going to be saying, okay, where to go. For sure, there will be a lot of, I think it's going to be less, as you mentioned, no? It's going to be less money there. There's going to be from the public money, is going to be where to put the money. Where actually, which sort of new initiatives are the ones we need to put in order to generate better conditions. And I do believe that these employment generators will be a clear value proposition that everyone would like to be there, you know, because I think we haven't, I don't know, the other day I was reading, I think that the level of GDP impact is in this 2020 for a lot of economies is going to be huge. And we know that when there is a huge impact on GDP in the moment, then in the low, this has been more like due to the crisis that we thought that was just one moment, the impact that is going to generate in employment that usually comes with a delay is going to be huge, you know. And I think there is where we need to play. How is going to be the investment moving? To be honest, I don't really have yet clarity about where they're going to be trying to put now. For the majority of the cases, I think that it's going to be very more passive, saying, okay, it's moment to not invest and to keep until there is more and more crisis. And then there will be some to put it in these new quick wins. How many of them there will be more in this impact investment? Okay, let's make a wise use of our money in order to generate the positive impact for this new crisis. This is something I would love to see. I don't know what is the reality in Australia. In the case of Europe, in the last 5 years, this impact investment has been an emerging trend and is growing. So, for example, one fund that we work together, SIP2B, until the last 2 years, they have a fund of 4 million euros. Now, for this coming year, they moved from 4 million euros after using the last 3 years to 30 million euros. So I do believe that if this impact investment, if it is enough strong with this crisis that is coming, will be much bigger, you know, and there will be much more resources for this impact investment. So they are investing. It's not that they are giving money, they are investing, but they are investing in order to generate impact. I do believe that this will be one of the quick wins or the new emerging realities that is coming with this crisis. But yes, as you say, the prediction of what is coming, I think I don't know, at least from my personal opinion, I'm a very optimistic person, but I do believe that we are going to have like this quite a challenge. So we need to be very focused and very smart, you know. Now is the moment to be very sharp and very smart, because we need to be very flexible and we need to clearly identify which sort of activities to put the energy in order to have development. Usually projects like the cooperative projects or the education or the platform co-ops, they do need to have a long-term view, but as you mentioned, they will need to have a long-term view with a clear short-term positive impact. Otherwise, the coming years will be like, yeah, but are we putting this for when, for how, which is the risk? And I think that is a challenge, especially in the development of the digital solutions. Traditionally, when we think on creating an alternative, and I think it was the founder of Fermondo, no, that he was saying that is a huge marketplace as an alternative for the existing marketplaces. He was addressing, you really need to have a big investment in order to be running a digital platform. And I do believe that is there. But at the same time, now with the crisis that is coming, I think we will need to be a lot of iterations and be raising money gradually instead of raising very big amount of money since the very beginning. And for that, let's see how we move it.
My last provocation for you to consider and give us your view is around data. They tell me, and when I say they, I mean the economists and the financial papers, tell me that data is now officially more valuable than oil. I haven't ever received a dividend from my data, but how do you imagine data and platform cooperatives to operate in the near future? And how can individuals concerned about data sovereignty, data privacy, and data benefits be captured by the platform cooperative movement so that it's positive as opposed to negative?
Yeah. So I think in that data and then the use of technology, I do believe that when we look at why in between these two, which is the role that platform companies need to have, I think one of the quick wins is this intercooperation that we say. The other one is we need to be technology-wise, we need to be very strong. Why? Because the conventional models, they are very strong today. There are a lot of business models of the platform businesses that they are not interested in the commission in the moment, but they're interested in the long term to collect of the data and to have like all the control of the data. We see the huge tensions in between China and the rest of the world, and I think one of the reasons is like with this or IoT sort of control of all the data, who is going to be the control of the data. And I do believe, to be honest, every time that I have this invitation of when you are trying to download to everything and say, okay, please accept the conditions. In the case of the European law, it's very restrictive. So then every time that you are going to be accepting cookies, you need to accept. And then what I do is before saying yes, I just check who is behind. And as an average, you have 30, 40, 50 players that they are collecting your data every time that you say, So actually, I'm trying to get into a newspaper and they say, oh, please say yes if you want to keep on surfing. And then I say, okay, but say yes to what? And then I look back and there's 50 companies that they don't know at all, that they are collecting my data when I'm just trying to see a news in a newspaper. I do believe that this is not fair and is not optimal. And I do believe that the cooperative movement in general, and I hope that the social entrepreneurs as a whole, and we need to really create in this data privacy, data value, we really need to have like a self-control in that sense. I think there are one platform course that is my data, that is in this case is more for originally from Switzerland. Also we have an adaptation in Catalonia, in Barcelona. This is, for example, for your health data. But I think that this theory that, oh yes, your personal data is not interested, it's only interesting when it's aggregated. Okay, I think that is great, but then we could create an alternative that we come together playing in teams, so then our collective data, we can take self-control of that. I do believe that this is something that definitely will happen. When to happen, this I don't know. Why? Because for sure there's a huge interest for getting all your data as soon as possible, even without you paying attention. This we have seen also in this mobility. I don't know in the reality of Australia, but in the case of China, where I was living, and then in the case of Europe and Spain, for example, we have seen a lot of all these bicycles and skateboards and this sort of all these sharing platforms that is there. What they are doing is collecting your data. They are collecting data. And until now, for example, the legislation has been just, okay, let's embrace this. And then by the moment you realize that you cannot walk in a path because there are devices all around, you don't start to try to put limits to the control of how to use in the public data, in the public sphere, to use of these devices. Similarly, I think we are going to be seeing in the use of your data. And I do believe that is a very important issue in order to be addressed by all these gig economy sort of players that we have in the platform cops movement, in order to actually become a counterbalance. Because otherwise, I don't know, I love this Harari, the author of Sapiens, the book, and actually he said that we are moving into a society where technology can hack humans, okay? So the problem that we are behind this is that if we don't have control of our data, then everyone who is having our data will change our behavior, even if we are not conscious of that, So I do believe there is a huge urgency on this. But then again, another challenge that we have in the platform cops movement is how able we are to bring talented people that they might be having a much better conditions working for a big conglomerate to be playing here in order to be creators of this, and bringing the wisdom in order to find an alternative to what is there. What I believe is that if we look to the traditional way that you have like, okay, again, this confrontation, in our case, is not confrontation. It's actually to tell the people, okay, it's not that we have the existing status quo, there is the counterbalance that is there. No, I do believe that what we need is actually challenges to say, okay, you are going to be part of a new solution to what is there. And as long as we are able to bring the best talented people to be working in creating these alternatives, I think will be great, because we will be proving that it's possible a different way. And data, I do believe that is a very sensitive aspect. In two ways. It's the similarly that what we see at the platform business model, no? Because now data-driven business models are very successful. Maybe not for the results today, but from the long-term results. So actually the fact of the crisis, let's see how it plays, in that speed. But I think in that sense, from the cooperative movement, we need, similarly to the platform cops business model, we need to be key players. We need to also embrace data business models as part of our solution, on that. So I love that you pointed out, because I think it's very important.
Thank you, Jose. I'm going to ask you for I'm Australian. Most of the audience, I imagine, for this will be Australian. What would you suggest, given, our picture of the future has been dystopian and utopian, and we've only had a little play with the messy middle. But what would your 3 top priorities be for the Australian cooperative movement in order for us to, maybe leapfrog from where we are today, where corporations are the norm? How can we maybe leapfrog into a future that is cooperative schooling, cooperative shopping, cooperative banking? What would be the 3 top priorities in your view?
And if I will have to say priorities, I think first, we need, especially in the platform course, we need more and more people experimenting. So I think what you are doing now within Co-op, I think is great. We need to experiment, because I think somehow we are a little bit blocked. Okay, we know that this is not good, but what is good? So actually what I think we need to do in this learning by doing, let's experiment with it. Let's play with it, Let's get trained with it, and let's play with it naturally, And even if they are very small initiatives, let's play with them. Let's see the engagement that we have. No? As far as I know, the Australian society, you are very drivers of innovation in terms of actually, okay, let's move it forward. So I would say, okay, let's move it forward into this, both from the cooperative movement as well as from the conventional sort of entrepreneurship initiatives in Australia. Let's try to explore this, And I think the role that you are doing, I think, is great. More and more people to actually experiment this, to be aware of this, and try to play with it. And especially there, combining more experienced people that they have seen the journey so far, and young people. I think that's a key asset to actually start experimenting. And once we have this in place, for sure, system change, we need to have like these more key people who in this case, luckily in terms of Australia, because of the size that you have, I think that there will be this capacity of actually from the government, as well as from the different local regions, as well as the different key places in the local region, to actually say, okay, once we want this to play, we need to system change to try to imagine what sort of system we love to see. This eventually will mean, okay, we need to have, for example, something we are doing now, a new project that we are generating is, yes, for this crisis that is coming, we need to have like some sort of incubators that will become employment generators. We would love to see that there are employment generators with this platform business, platform sort of digital platform solutions. So then maybe eventually in the case of Spain, we are thinking of having 20 of them all around the country. So then eventually you can have places where actually the people can see and say, oh, this is possible to play. It's not that I'm just playing at my place, but actually this is the new reality. No? Similarly, that the incubators or local has been created in the past for developing entrepreneurship. In this case, it's okay, we want to have people active in this crisis that is coming, connecting with this. And then eventually we will be like more these hope sort of places where you can see how the things are moving. And then while we move into this actions oriented, then will be possible to see at the global scale what will be the things to active. I'm sure that Australia has a huge capacity also of leveraging funds. So then in a moment to say, okay, yes, in order to nurture this to a different level, we need to leverage funds that will be possible for them. So then this will be a third step that needs to take in place. But instead, what I would suggest, instead of just trying to see the sea or see the ocean from the distance and the water, try to imagine and to be this theoretical part, what I will invite you is actually, as you are doing already from Incuba Co-op leading, is let's try to start playing. Let's try to start playing, let's connect youth and people to create a different type of platform businesses to try to see how far we can reach with the aim of generating employment, to accompany them to develop. We do need to have a layer on learning, on training, on education, but also is this learning and doing. I do not believe that it's just a matter of creating educational programs and not the execution, but we need educational programs with execution, and then eventually more these strategic steps, as it is the funding, the infrastructure, the sort of policy making, to have always this connection in order to see what to nurture. I don't know. I think that the your region can be very promising in that sense, because also the reality of the country, as far as I have been there a few times, it is so connected with. I think it's a region that is much more human-centered than other parts of the world. Why? Because nature is so strong, is so present. So I think in that sense, this might make that the realities as Australia, as New Zealand, you are much more closer to nature. I think that maybe it's a little bit similar to what happened in Mondragon, as we have such a huge nature present there. Then this dystopia in between, which is, I don't know, I know that a lot of fellows and friends from China, they have been trained and educated in Australia. And for example, what they say is like, come on, this is a totally different world. When we are used to be living in cities like Shanghai or Beijing, what we are seeing in Australia is totally different. So I think in that sense, you might be in a wiser viewpoint to what is coming. And I will believe that I believe that embracing platform co-ops and start doing and experimenting, connecting youth and experienced people to play together might be one of the first steps to do.
I just want to say thank you. I'm not going to keep you any longer. This is
brilliant.
Amazing. Rowan, I don't know if
Thank you so much. That was great.
Share the graphic, and I'll just conclude. Dr. Jose, thank you again. Thank you, Rowan. Thank you, Gareth. We'll get this produced and out into the wild as soon as we can. But thank you so much.